Hey everybody, welcome to Investing in Cannabis. I'm your host, Brandon David. I hope you and your family are healthy and relatively sane and self-quarantine wherever in the world you are. I'm in my apartment in Venice Beach planning to stay here. Good news for you guys is there are still new podcasts out there. And we have a great show this week. We have Michael of Leaftrade, which is a wholesale marketplace for buyers and cultivators and processors, pretty much just speeding up that whole supply chain, taking away a lot of friction from that transaction process. Really good episode if you're interested in technology and cannabis. We dive deep into how software works, how to build a software company, how to adapt it to the cannabis industry. Really interesting stuff, guys. We recorded it a long time ago, more than a month ago, so there's no mentions of Corona or anything like that. So if you want to escape with us into the world of cannabis technology and software, welcome. I learned a ton. You're going to learn a ton. Tune in, listen up, get acquainted.
Well, Michael, thanks so much for joining us. Really nice to have you.
Great to be here.
So let's get started on an easy one. What is Leaftrade?
Leaftrade is a platform that connects licensed dispensaries with licensed cultivators and processors and makes it easier for them to buy on the platform and makes it easier for the cultivators to fulfill their order and understand how to serve up their inventory.
Got it. So wholesale kind of cannabis marketplace with some tools attached to this, right? Which one did you kind of start with? Did you start with the tool side or more the sort of marketplace side?
Yeah, we like to refer to ourselves as a closed marketplace, being that only the licensed providers in each market can connect. So when I think of a marketplace, I think of kind of more of an open experience. And so
you have to be invited to the platform. Is that
yeah, you have to be invited, and usually there's a customer relationship already, and this is the tool that they're using to execute the orders in the relationship. There's not as much discovery on our platform, but when we initially launched the platform, we did launch it as kind of an open marketplace where you could shop and compare products and prices and that kind of stuff. And the dynamics of the market and the supply and demand issues of early markets led us and our customers that asked that we made it more like a closed market fulfillment platform. And so we started with, how do dispensaries, how could we make it easier for them to not only see the products, but all the products metadata, and how could they order faster and easier? And
so that's a big word in data science, metadata. Yep. Unpack that just a little bit, what that means. I think cannabis people will be enlightened.
Yeah. So, while pictures are really important and showing people, how the product looks, I think, especially in the cannabis space, it's very important to understand what is behind the picture. What are the different labs? When was this harvested? All the kind of different data points that go along with the products. And because this has really started out in most states as a medical program, it's very important to understand not only the labs, but the different volume size, how it's packaged, the effects, all that kind of stuff. Any marketing data is all correlated with that one product. And we've even go so far as they can even change it by batch. So even if it's the same product, packaged the same way, grown in the same environment, tested at the same lab, it may have slightly different results. And those results, may have a higher potency. And so some cultivators may charge differently on potencies. And so our platform very early on in the experience kind of breaks through and allows the buyer to see all that information. And some buyers use it and some buyers buy because of it and some buyers don't. But it's a very easy, compact way for them to keep all that up front.
What's the biggest pushback you hear from buyers? Why don't they want to use it?
We really don't get pushback from buyers. The buyers, most of the buyers are not using anything until we come into the market. And so they have to do whatever process the cultivators have set up. And sometimes it could be spreadsheets that are sent out on Sunday night with the different SKUs that are available. And that buyer then has to email or text what they want. And maybe they were watching the Grammys and they didn't get their text message in until Monday, and that inventory could be gone. And
Yep.
so buyers are excited that what they see is what they get. And there's a platform on there and they can put their order and they can go back and forth with the order. The seller has the ability to upsell them or introduce new products. So we don't get a lot of pushback from the buyer. There's the change of behavior where if a buyer is not using anything, they could get a little nervous about technology, but we have really made the experience for the buyers easier. And, we have really focused on the mobile ordering experience because of the demand being so high in many of our markets. A cultivator may send out their weekly menu, in a newsletter format with a link to Leaftrade, and the buyer might be on their mobile phone and can log right in and make his or her purchase.
Yeah, that's amazing.
So speed to market and speed to order is very important, and so buyers like that.
And how about from the vendor side? Tell us a little bit about that experience.
Yeah, we've got kind of three different experiences when we bring on a new vendor. One, kind of our large scale customers that we've worked with in other markets. Those are, the Veranos, the GTIs, the Grassroots, who want to use our platform in all of their markets for operational consistency. And for them, it's coordinating rollout, getting their customers on. It's more of an implementation exercise. For the new customers who don't use anything, it's really an education on, hey, I know your sales might be good. Your product's great. So there isn't necessarily something that's torpedoing your business, but what you're doing is not scalable. And at 30 to 70 wholesale orders, it's doable. But when you start getting to 150 to 200 to 300 wholesale orders, with 25 to 50 different SKUs and products, it becomes a nightmare and it becomes a slowdown in their business. And, trying to, use 4 or 5 different tools becomes very, very complicated. And, they are excited about it, but it is an onboarding and, education on, how, and we really look at ourselves as, consultants when it comes to supply chain and process. And so we try to get in there, see what they're doing. And we really try to implement Leaftrade where it can wrap around, some of the things they're doing. The markets are different. And so not every process is the same for every market. So we have companies who use Leaftrade differently in different markets, even if it's the same company. And so we really try to understand, the limitations they have or, the things that set them apart, and, just try to make sure that Leaftrade is, keeping their process efficient and that their customers understand what inventory is for sale, and then that they can fulfill it and they have one single source of truth when it comes to wholesale, and different people in the organization, whether that would be a sales rep focusing on that account, a CFO trying to, close the month's books out, a packaging team member, actually executing on an order. They all have different roles inside Leaftrade. And they all enter Leaftrade at different parts of the process. And so getting everyone kind of on one platform really, we've seen it bring the organization together and, allows them to be more efficient.
Got it. So it sounds like your biggest competitor is Google Docs. But aside from that, there are others that do this. without mentioning any names, why are you guys better? What are you doing that's better? What's your competitive advantage?
Yeah, our competitive advantage is we built a enterprise software platform from the ground up. The way we architected the database, the way that we built the experience, like we talked about before with the closed marketplace, we understand that this is not a plug and play market. One size does not fit all. And so our platform, whether it be a closed marketplace, which will help the cultivators, increase and expand their relationship with their buyer. If it's our different algorithms that they can use to control supply and show to the right people at the right time. We've got, 3 or 4 really good industry integrations, and we didn't, just slap together an API and pull data. We actually built out very comprehensive screens that allow the cultivator to manage inventory and approve what goes on to Leaftrade. And so, in a nutshell, I think that we are building for what we think are large enterprise problems, and we are trying to be the solution for that. Again, nothing against the other players in the market. I think they've just taken more of a marketplace approach, and it can be helpful for dispensaries to see who's out there and connect with different people. In the markets we focus on, that's not that big of an issue because there's not 6,000 dispensaries or even 1,000.
Right.
So finding who to buy from
is not hard.
Is not hard, and so that's why we've taken that approach.
Right. Well, that makes sense. And whatever you're doing, it's certainly working. I've got a couple stats here. Almost 300 million in GMV. That's a big number. That's a big number. And that's an annual number, or where's that number coming from? Or that's overall, that's total so far?
Yeah, so that is our total number up until, I want to say, July of last year. We were only in 3 markets.
Okay.
And so the number, is growing exponentially month over month, almost 60%.
Wow.
And we've got probably what will be, 6 to 10 of our larger customers deploying in different markets in March and April. So while we're proud of the $300 million to date and almost $40 million last month, we think this is just the beginning.
What percentage of the industry does that make up?
Well, it's interesting. It's a little hard because the market, the biggest part of the market is still in California and Colorado. For example, like Illinois, which will probably end up being, when it's all said and done, the 3rd or 4th biggest state, is still very small compared to California.
Yep.
So I would say another way to look at it is the markets that we're in, or the markets we've been in for more than 60 days, we have about 70 to 80% of the total GMV in those markets.
Got it.
Some higher, some, in the 65 to 70. And most of the time, the people who aren't using Leaftrade are, the Google Doc warriors.
Well, aside from the fact that you're from Illinois, how conscious were you of this strategy of not going into California or Colorado or these big ones, or at least initially not going in?
It's what we built our whole model on. We think about it every day. We get 3 to 5 inbounds a day from Colorado or Oregon, Washington, California, and we, are excited to serve those markets when the market kind of figures out what's going on. And we probably will be in California just with our current customers, and they'll give us their customers.
Yeah.
Yep. A lot of them are buying licenses, but we are, focused on getting market share of these, smaller markets that are controlled by larger players in multiple markets.
Got it. Yeah, no, I mean, look, you don't need me to tell you this, but I think it's very smart. I advise a number of companies, and we're all focusing on other markets because California is such a clusterfuck today. And yes, somebody will win, but it's very unclear who that will be. And lots of software companies have come and gone already, even in this short little period here. So kudos.
Appreciate it. Yeah,
uh,
and that's my background is enterprise software, whether it be in the food space or
Yeah, this
tech.
didn't come out of nowhere. I mean, you've been doing this a long time. Tell us a little bit about. I was a B2B SaaS guy once upon a time too. So
Yeah, I think everyone does a little B2B SaaS here and there, and even if it's not SaaS, people call it SaaS, right? So yeah, so I cut my teeth at a company called Go Health. What ended up being a B2B insurance marketplace and a tech platform for insurance brokers to, serve their clients better. And we grew that, pretty rapidly. But again, that was the first time in my career where I saw regulations and legislation, directly affect our business, but also, the guys at Go Health, we figured out a way to use those rules and regulations to actually make a bigger business. And took that to a company I founded called Amstats. And, we wanted to do a similar roadmap that I had worked at Go Health, but for the health and fitness industry for small to medium-sized gyms where they could have their own platform and they could collect payments and scheduling, and all their different trainers and employees could have their little microsite and book appointments. We sold that business in 2015 to National Academy of Sports Medicine. They are the body that certifies trainers. Did about a year and a half at a really cool company called EcoFit, and we put tools, supply chain tools, IoT sensors on fitness equipment to give supply chain data, what treadmills were being used, what treadmills weren't, rotations. And that was kind of my first foray into supply chain. Spent some time at a very, very cool startup called Fuda, basically corporate lunch, on demand.
I've heard of it. So I'm pretty sure I sent you guys like maybe 5,000 cold emails. I used to do sales at a company called OnFleet, which is a logistics management platform. And so
okay.
You were on all the lead lists.
Yeah. Well, we moved. Yeah. So when I left, we started there. I think we were in 3 or 4 markets. My role was, really to lead up growth and sales. And, a lot of the markets were very different based on rules, regulations, supply, restaurants. And so that's really where, again, I kind of figured out these, individual market dynamics. Spent some time at Career Builder on the corp dev M&A side, running large transactions, which was interesting. And then in the middle started a subscription box service called Fan Chest for sports fans, and we sold that in December of 2019 to
a lot of exits.
Yeah, a few exits, but you'd think like I would take a break, but I just think that it just gives you more firepower, ammunition,
more opportunities, right?
Yeah, more opportunities, but also you look at things differently, and it's easier to recognize problems.
Okay, so you're a successful software founder. Why this industry? I mean, cannabis is such a clusterfuck, and you could have done anything you wanted, man. Why this?
Yeah, I think there's 2 reasons, and I think everyone in the cannabis space has some kind of personal reason why they're joining the space. And I think most people look at the actual revenue or, business opportunity. For me, I've never been like a huge drinker. I'm not opposed to it. But but it's always been interesting for me to watch kind of the different social cues people give you, drinking versus cannabis. And I always, kind of told people, I was like, there is no medical benefits for drinking alcohol, right? And please, like, show me the research where drinking
challenge
wine.
me, please.
Yeah. There's that like one research study where it says if you drink a glass of wine, it prevents heart attacks. It's like, I'm sure there's something else you could do that would have the same effect. But, for me, it's
eat
always
fruit.
Exactly. Baby aspirin works too, right? And I like that it is really an organic product. And while, they're finding cool ways to introduce it, whether that be chocolate or creams, I really started looking at it from both the social side, and seeing the walls come down and seeing, people who are in, SaaS marketing space and, SaaS sales space kind of gravitate to these new roles and use their skill set. And so, like any good entrepreneur, I started really researching the market, both the West Coast and these, very highly regulated markets. And, met early Leaftrade team, when there was one intern and James, and he had already had this amazing product and he had real users and real companies, but we didn't necessarily have our go-to-market outside of Illinois and, really planned out. And, how were we going to, build a revenue model that could support innovating on the tech side. And, with our powers combined, that being kind of my strong suit, and James Yee, being very, very focused in the customer experience from an operation and technical product side, it was just a really, really good fit. And, we kind of jumped in pretty quick together and haven't looked back.
So because you come from a software background, I want to talk about like what's different about sort of sales now that you're in the cannabis industry, even though you guys are ancillary, versus the sales cycle and technique. And first of all, there's very little sort of viral loop, right? You can't spend a lot of money in Google and Facebook and all the other places where people spend money to get software leads. How have you compensated for that? And it was a stark difference for me when I first came over.
Yeah, I think you have to go old school. You have to talk to customers. You have to understand their problems, because there's not 10,000 customers knocking on the door. At Fuda, we could pull a list of all the buildings and all the companies, and we could go after them. And, if X percentage convert and back into a model.
Yep.
Like you said, I can't spend, $1 million on marketing if I wanted to.
Right.
I'm sure,
you could waste it, but
yeah. But good point. I couldn't get the return, whereas you could in other SaaS or high growth companies. And so it's forced us to really understand what's working in the industry from a Leaftrade perspective, building real organic content around that, and sharing it with customers. We do a lot of, customer focused events on, whether it's Leaftrade or another platform, how you should be looking at your business, the areas that you can focus on to consolidate, maybe people or other products. That way, you can focus on margin and making sure, the profit is where your investors or management team need. And so, if anything, it's like kind of made us really just hunker down and do things, the way that people, marketed and sold before. You just dumped in money to Facebook and Google all the time. And while in the beginning, it's hard to build that because it's very organic and you can't just, step on the gas. It makes us kind of a 360 company and really getting in deep with our customers.
Yeah. Well, you touched on my next question there, which is, venture capitalists are very comfortable with the SaaS model because there's only a few levers that really matter. But in your business, it's quite a bit different. And I wonder, how did that fundraising discussion go? Because on the one hand, it must open a lot of doors. Hey, we're ancillary, we're SaaS, but you definitely don't have the same kind of growth curve that a traditional tech business would. Tell me about that process a little bit and sort of explaining what you just explained to me.
Yeah, I think I've raised money at I think every company I've worked at, and it's different, depending on the type of company as well as the stage they're in, as well as the stage the economy's in. And I think really early, um, I understood that people like to invest or want to invest in cannabis because you can't, go online or turn on the news or go on social media without seeing what's happening all over the country. It's now in our presidential election. I mean, it's it is not happening, it's happened.
Yep.
And so for me, when we started pitching early investors, it was really important to educate them on the different market dynamics, right? Not what these products could do to the consumers, but the demand, the supply chain holes, the different licensing by markets, how that affects our product, our strategy, like we talked about before, focusing on these highly regulated markets, and how we then grow our product and platform within the organization and say, okay, well, you've got XYZ problems, we'll add a tech solution inside Leaftrade and we'll handle that. And so really educating the potential investors was kind of a priority from day one. And this is the nature of venture investors, is they get really smart on, or they try to get really smart on
try is the right word.
We're lucky, we have good backers, and they did get really smart, and some of them had relevant cannabis experience. So it was a little easier to get this group together, but that's kind of their job, is figure out, okay, how do the market dynamics or new markets or regulations impact, for better or worse, this platform. And once we really kind of focus in that direction, then they understand our strategy and they understand the financial model and kind of implement, the different entry points.
So you closed a round in December. How long, what's that runway give you? And kind of what do you, even in general terms, what do you hope to accomplish in that time period with that money?
Yeah, so that was 18 months of capital, which is, the number that you've, conservatively, that you've got to give yourself. Typically, I tell people it takes anywhere from 6 to 9 months to raise a round. If you've done it before, most likely it could be in the 3 to 6 months. So if you raise 18 months of capital, that gives you a full year before you should really have to worry about capital. And so what we really wanted to do is really build out our tech team, our database and infrastructure team, not for, moving things forward, at 20 or 30 miles an hour. We wanted to, make some big jumps, and, we've got a really, really good, innovative team that, is ahead of schedule, which I've never seen in any of the companies I've ever worked. I've never seen a tech team deliver features and stories faster than expected. But the next part was, now that we had kind of figured out our story and figured out, what we meant to people in the market and, how people viewed us, we were, the next step would be build out our sales and marketing channel and tell that story, as well as, some hemp and payment initiatives. So really it's, we had kind of the wedge product in there, and we had the right strategy, and it was just to bring in the resources to execute moving forward.
It sounds incredibly well organized, like a great strategy, which sometimes is a novelty in this industry, even at this more advanced position. One thing that you kind of have very little control over, but really impacts everybody in the cannabis industry, is the continued use of the black market, or I sometimes say duty-free market. But what do we do? I kind of feel like there's one strategy here where marketplaces actually hold the keys. Like if you can only get that shit at that price on Leaftrade, just for example, like you sort of do lock the black market out in a way. Do you agree with that sort of strategy? Or furthermore, what should we do about this black market problem in general?
Yeah, so you picked one topic that I may not be the best person to ask, only because our strategy is focusing on the states that, just in general, the black market is just getting pushed down because, dispensable dispensaries have good products, they're accessible, and,
But
for
that's amazing too. What you're saying is that in Chicago, it's not as big of a problem. Is that?
Yeah, it's there's obviously the adjustment, right? Like there's rec users who have been buying off the black market for 3, 5, 10, 15 years, and now a dispensary opened up, and they're like, yeah, I don't need to do that, and then they get their card, or it becomes legal, and they enter in, and they see the experience, and the quality. So we've definitely seen, from what I could tell, we've definitely seen the black market go down in some of these markets.
That's great.
I think the part that can be more concerning for the industry, and I know California is dealing with this, is you've got a lot of legal license holders in California that are growing it legally but selling it illegally.
Yep.
And I know you've got a ton of that going on in Michigan and Oregon and Washington, and it messes the price up. It's very tough to chop up the market when you've got people selling. You've got the legal people who appear legal, but they're not following the rules, and so the money's not going back into the economy. It's not being taxed and all that kind of stuff. So I think the way that the East Coast states east of Colorado have rolled it out have given the markets a chance to say, okay, like if you are a grower here, everything goes through, the barrier to entry is bigger, and it makes it easier for them to raise capital. It makes it easier for them to open nicer dispensaries and get better products. And, when you look at the likes of, GTI and Grassroots and Cresco and Verano, they've got really, really, really high quality products and different innovative products, and the experience is good, and people like that. People like good products and a good experience, and I think it's they've proven that that's the way to approach it. But I think that growing it legally and selling it illegally is just, that's the torpedo in these markets, and I think that is directly connected with the number of licenses on the grow side. I think that you can look at the markets that have more than 25 or 30 cultivation or processor licenses. They're the ones that are having black market issues.
Right.
The ones that are in the below 50, things are pretty tight.
Yeah, I mean, it's just really interesting discussion, because obviously it's not the consumer's fault.
Correct. Yeah, we're
they
dumb.
just want
Consumers,
cheap, great weed.
yeah,
That's all.
right. They want cheap weed or new cool products. They don't want more expensive. I don't want to buy something that I could buy from a guy off the street that at the dispensary is just $15 more. Like that doesn't do anything. But if the product is competitive, better, they do a great job on educating you what types of products you should be using for, whether it's anxiety or, pain. There's different types of products they introduce you to, whether that be, creams or oils. That's where I think these, newer emerging markets are doing a really, really, really good job.
Well, they are doing a really good job, and those categories are doing well legally in California.
Yep.
The diversity, all of that is important, especially when you talk about seniors or other demographics. But in terms of just flower, like you said, the same flower that came from the same cultivator in California right now, it's about half in the black market what it is in the dispensary. And a lot of that has to do with taxes. They raised the taxes again this year. And it's a little bit insane, but kind of glad to hear that it's not so insane where you are, and that legal is sort of winning. That's encouraging. That's encouraging to hear. I want to shift gears just a little bit here and talk about sort of you and who you are behind the businessman, behind the software. How has your personal relationship with cannabis changed as a result of having this business?
Not as much as I thought. I'll be honest. Like I, was a rec user before, and I'm a rec user now. I think my knowledge of the different products and the different chemistry behind the products, different types of products, different uses, the medical uses, and the appreciation for the medical use has gone from 1 to 10. But I always get the ask when people maybe I knew from other industries, and I tell them what I'm doing now, or they hear about it and they say, do you guys sit around and
Get
just
high all day. Yeah.
smoke all day? And it's like, no, I don't. We are in CRMs and spreadsheets, and
It's like asking if
Slack.
somebody at the winery is hammered all day.
Yeah. I was like, maybe one day I'll, be able to sleep past 8:00. But
Right.
I think it's, for me, it's more of an appreciation for kind of the wide net and the multiple uses people have. And it's, as I said, it's, everyone deals with life differently, whether that's, pain, whether that's anxiety or some of the issues, or like I said, you've got a lot of people who instead of having a glass of Chardonnay at night to wind down after work are eating a piece of chocolate. And, long term, that's healthier. And I think for me, being able to have, real conversations with people about cannabis without them kind of looking down on you has been something that's been really exciting for me. Even, family members, and I think the stigma is starting to go away, and I'm excited to kind of help lead that. I mean, it's a total team effort from the industry, but I like being, even if I'm a small part of it, I like being a part of that.
Mm-hmm. I think that's as good a place to start to wrap up as any. It's been so great to have you. Thank you for being open and honest, and congrats on all your success so far. How can we help you? How can the audience help you? Are you hiring for anything or something?
Yeah,
you want to plug?
we're always hiring. We're hiring salespeople. We're hiring engineers. Feel free to reach out to me, whether you're looking for a job or I love talking to people about the industry. We're always looking for smart, energetic people. And my email is michael@leaftrade.com. So pretty easy. And, if you're a cultivator or a dispensary and you're interested in Leaftrade, great. If you're just interested in, learning or hearing about different things that are going on, we're happy to help there too.
Well, thanks again, Michael. It's been great.
Awesome. Well, thanks for having me.
Absolutely.